50 years after the most famous concert of all time, Woodstock, a series of concerts were planned for celebration at the town's historic Bearsville Theater. In 2020, the series finale, they would honor the greatest guitarist of all time, Jimi Hendrix, with a performance by Kiss the Sky, the world-renowned Jimi Hendrix tribute band that many call a re-experience. A slew of special guests and performers were scheduled to celebrate the event with Kiss the Sky. COVID-19 had other plans. The show would go on, but it would take some Hendrix-inspired creativity and innovation to pull it off. The plan was to do a series of podcasts with the special guests leading up to the event, and cap it off with a Livestream concert event from Bearsville Theater. The podcasts were produced by the Pt.1 Podcast Network and featured Billy Cox, Jimy Bleu, Juma Sultan, and many others connected to Jimi.
Pt.1 Podcasts presents Deeper Digs with host and rock and roll archaeologist Christian Swain.
Here's some memorable moments from the podcasts and the Kiss the Sky live stream event from Bearsville Theater.
See why Rolling Stone magazine has said, yes, believe the hype, this show lives up to it. And why Access TV crowned Kiss the Sky featuring left-handed guitar virtuoso and one of our guests today, Jimy Bleu, the world's greatest tribute to Jimi Hendrix.
Woo! That is a sexy band!
Kiss the Sky recreates Hendrix's most iconic concert moments in full replica wardrobe and gear so accurate that they've had the honor of playing with all surviving members of Hendrix's own band, including Billy Cox, another guest with us today, the last gypsy.
Billy Cox, welcome to Deeper Digs. How you doing today?
Nothing to brag about, nothing to complain about. I'm glad to be here.
So you guys get up, or the sun's up. The crowd's beginning to wane a little bit, and you put on one hell of a show. I mean, it's a legendary show. I guess the question must be asked about the anthemic and iconic version of Star Spangled Banner.
It's always asked. If you listen carefully, you will hear the bass player, whoever that guy was, play the first 5 or 6 notes, and something told him, says, all right, buddy, I think you got to lay out now, because there's something happening that you never practiced for, and you don't know how it's going to go. So you'll hear me play those notes, and I laid out, and Lord have mercy, what a most incredible rendition of the Star Spangled Banner I've ever heard, and haven't heard it like that since.
No, there's a reason why it's so iconic. It has a lot to say, and it can say a lot of things to a lot of people when they listen to it. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So, obviously we lost your dear friend way, way too early. So I might ask, if he could, go work on that RV of yours today, where do you think he would be?
Light years ahead of everyone else, more than in anything. I think that he would be. Jimi Hendrix is as relevant today in the 21st century as he was in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Because he wrote in the now. He impacted lives in many untold ways to the soldiers and the rice paddies and jungles in Vietnam and brothers and sisters.
Oh, man. Yeah, Machine Gun,
lovers.
Just amazing songs. Yeah.
Yeah, lovers of peace who and justice, and for those musicians who were looking for a new direction in music. To the countless young people who held on to our music, because so many of them told me that was all they had.
Mm-hmm.
And he spoke to those empty places in their lives. The gypsies today, or whatever, Hendrix, our music, the compositions, the lyrics, and the musicianship is beyond par of anything that is even recorded today, which means he will always be in the now, because we were about musical excellence, expression, and soul all wrapped into the body of spirit.
They don't know what I know. I know. Do you know? Do you know? I don't know what to know. I don't know. What my baby? What my baby? Put it down. Going down. What my baby? My baby. Put it down, yeah. Going down. I just came back in town. I don't know. Running round, yeah. Going down. I just came back in town. We don't know. Looking for my salad. I don't know. I didn't see her, yeah. Have you seen her? I didn't see her. I don't know. Talking about my baby. I'm talking about my baby. Woo-hoo.
Well, it was a special time. We talk a lot about how the culture was changing, the technology was improving rapidly, right in that period of time. Brown v. Board of Education, 1954, the Civil Rights Voting Rights Acts in 1965, 64, 65, kicked open the door and allowed people to, congregate together and develop, art together. And at the same time, this technology, which, let's face it, a lot of it kind of started with World War II, and it just went and improved and improved and improved. And, the electric guitar was fairly a relatively new instrument. It is definitely the sound of industrial America of the 20th century. It all just kind of comes together in that moment. And, you and Hendrix and, all of that class of rock and rollers, were able to invent this stuff. And, usually those are the ones that get the great credits of moving society forward.
Mm-hmm.
So
but Jimmy's music was spiritual too, and that which is spiritual multiplies and never divides.
Right.
And then we go to the Band of Gypsies. He left a lasting impact on rock, funk, R&B, hip hop, reggae, jazz, and blues.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's funny, we just lost, what may be the second, greatest guitar player of all time, Eddie Van Halen, who, was more than willing to say Jimi Hendrix certainly influenced him. And, when Edward passed, a lot of people talked about that, the two greatest guitar players in the history of rock and roll are those two guys. Would you agree with that?
That's right. Don't forget, there are two kind of guitar players. One who will admit being influenced by Jimmy, one who will not admit being influenced by Jimmy.
And we know which one are the liars. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the relevancy of Jimmy is obvious and palpable out there. And, one thing you can guarantee in almost every town in America is a Jimi Hendrix tribute band. On November 27th, which would have been Jimi Hendrix's 78th birthday, we're going to put on a show with Kiss the Sky, which features Jimy Bleu, and I think you know a little bit about that act, don't you?
I might add, Jimy Bleu has played with me for countless times, and what better guy to do that, man? This guy is a virtuoso on the guitar, and he puts on a dynamic show. So get on out there and check him out.
Yeah. He's worthy of the title of recreating the Jimi Hendrix experience. Although I know they take these recreations on these iconic shows, like Monterey Pop, like Woodstock, like Isle of Wight, and they get down to the detail and just perform it as if you were there, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
right.
that's
pretty
incredible.
He does. He has that spirit.
So he gets the spiritual nature of Jimi Hendrix as well as the technical prowess.
There it is. There it is. There it is. You said it all.
Well, good. Well, Billy Cox, geez, it's always great to talk to people that were heroes of mine and in our audience, and know that you're out there. In fact, what are you up to these days? Are you still playing around town? I mean, barring COVID, of course.
No, yeah, I'm just kind of laid dead right now. I'm an airbrusher, pinstriper, and I paint. I was going through a lot of classes prior to all of this, trying to bring out that part of that talent in me. And I'm having a great time with my studio downstairs, and I do that, and still writing songs and still having a good time and enjoying this life above ground. And I turned last month. I turned 81. So
81.
It doesn't mean after you get a certain age doesn't mean you have to retire. It means you just got people. I think a lot of times it's psychosomatic. People say, "Oh, you're old," and so they say, "I am old." So they act old, they look old, but if you believe that crap, well, go ahead and be old.
Then you'll be old.
I refuse to be. No, I'm just existing. I'm not getting old. I'm just existing and having a good time.
Well, God bless you. That's so great to hear. Billy Cox, thanks for being with us on Deeper Digs today.
Well, thank you for having me on, and have a great day, and maybe we'll hook up one day and shake hands.
Next, we have another of the great collaborators for Jimmy. Juma Sultan, born in 1942, is a jazz musician, most often recording as a percussionist or bass player. He may be best known for his appearance at the Woodstock Festival of 1969 at Bethel, New York, playing with Hendrix. He currently plays in the African performance group Sankofa, the band Sons of Thunder, and with the Juma Sultan Band. Sultan was born in Monrovia, California. In 1969, he performed at the Woodstock Festival in Hendrix's band Gypsy Sun and Rainbows, and on the Dick Cavett Show, and a special show in Harlem several weeks later. He was interviewed extensively for the documentary films Jimi Hendrix and Jimi Hendrix Live at Woodstock. He appears on approximately 12 of Jimi Hendrix's posthumous releases. Juma Sultan's musical talents span jazz, rock, blues, and spirituals throughout decades of performing, producing, and recording. In 2006, Clarkson University, in conjunction with Sultan, received a grant from the National Endowment of the Arts to preserve Sultan's audio and video documentation of avant-garde jazz during the 1960s and 1970s. The collection may be viewed at jumasarchive.org. All right, so now I give you Juma Sultan.
Welcome to Deeper Digs, Juma Sultan. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Excellent, it is. I'm up here, upstate New York. Still winter's coming on.
Yeah.
So It's great to talk to you. So I'm going to let you ask me the questions, and I won't go off.
Well, since you brought up Jimy Bleu and Kiss the Sky, obviously, you know, they are the headline act on the birthday celebration here coming up on November 27th at the Bearsville Theater up near you there in Woodstock. You are going to come down and sit in for a little bit, huh?
Well, occasionally I do sit in on certain segments. What I like about what they do with that is they present Jimmy at different levels.
Right. Very specific shows and recreations.
It's very educational.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what they're doing. So within that fact of keeping it within a historical concept, I respect them and also very good players. And I've always participated and enjoyed and many of the things that they do.
You know, he did the Dick Cavett show with Jimmy, and we at Recreations Concerts, we pride ourselves with recreating all of the epic Hendrix concerts from Monterey until he died. So we're covering tonight, especially since I'm already dressed and I ain't got time to change, we're going to do the Dick Cavett set with the original band member of Hendrix's band. On that night, we hope Dick Cavett is watching because we got Juma Sultan joining us on stage.
Well, it's an honor to be here on Jimmy's birthday. Just a few months ago, I was, not a few months ago, but as we know that it's strange for me because a couple months ago I was in Seattle, Washington with his family, and they celebrated his 50th memorial of his passing, which happened at Jimi Hendrix Park. They had a parade, the family was involved, and it was really a beautiful occasion. And so it's good to be here on his birthday with Kiss the Sky. And so I would just like to conclude with that and get on with the music.
as Bob Dylan says, he not busy being born is busy dying. So you gotta keep moving forward like a shark.
Yeah. Well, with how he was creating, and he used the studio for his board. And right now, Well, right now, cats are using their computers, so it was a far cry from that crap. I'm sorry, it was a far cry. He used the studio, or he used his own bedroom or wherever he was at. He was always the music was running and the sound. But what people understand is that his sound, in my understanding, was so wide that he was. When you listen to it, and when you listen to all the things he was creating in his sound, he was hearing orchestras, man. He was hearing a big sound beyond, beyond
guitar, bass, drums,
vibration.
Right.
Well, he was hearing orchestras, and eventually, he would have been arranging. I remember they were trying to put him up with next to Quincy and different things, but his concept was so much broader, as far as I was concerned. So,
Juma, I just want to thank you for spending some time with us and giving your thoughts and recollections on Jimi Hendrix and his legacy and the great work that you are doing and are continuing to do today.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for having me, and perhaps when I'm on the West Coast, I'll give you a call.
Most definitely, you look us up, Juma.
All right, be well.
You too.
Well, I wait around the train station, waiting for my train. Take me here, take me away from this Woodstock town. Too bad you let me go, Henry. Too bad you people put me down, put me down.
As I keep saying, the man of the hour, the Jimi Hendrix tribute of our age. And really, it's not me who says that, but most of the folks we've spoken to over the last few weeks. Returning to our show is none other than Jimy Bleu. Kiss the Sky, who you will see performing at the historic Bearsville Theater in Woodstock, New York, is fronted by virtuoso guitarist and former Columbia recording artist Jimy Bleu and backed by a cast of world-class touring musicians from the New York City metro area, whose combined resumes are astonishing. Recording and performing with major music stars such as Pearl Jam, Aretha Franklin, LL Cool J, Teddy Pendergrass, James Cotton, John Mayall, Billy Joel, Lady Gaga, and more. Kiss the Sky musicians are so experienced that all three of Jimmy's remaining former bandmates and living legends, as we've said, Billy Cox, Juma Sultan, and Jerry Velez, have each played on stage alongside Kiss the Sky performers.
Jimy Bleu, welcome to Deeper Digs. How are you doing today?
Christian, so good to see you again, my man.
Are you going to do one of the special shows that you guys do for this, or is this a new, unique thing for specifically for this event?
We're still working that out. The producer, Mike Gotch, is still really working that out, and we're still finalizing some things. So I can't really say for sure now.
All right, so it's up in the air because you guys are famous for doing these very particular recreations, like the Woodstock concert, or I believe Monterey Pop, Isle of Wight. I think also. Are there others that you do?
Yeah, people have often asked me throughout the decades, "Hey man, why don't you write a book? You were there," and I'm like, "I am the book." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For the past 4 years, I've been blessed to have as a partner Mike Gotch, who has the same vision I have of presenting Jimmy just like a Broadway play. It's very important. You know what I mean? Because this guy, what he accomplished in the industry and his potential before he died was just amazing, and it's missed by most people. So it's important for us to come on stage and show what he was like when he first, got discovered in 1966. And so until his death in 1970 and the various stages that he went through.
Yeah, it was just a few short years that we had him, on the pinnacle of rock and roll. Of course, he'd been, woodshedding and working it for at least almost a decade before. And I played with everybody, including Little Richard, as most people know. But he was always destined to be his own guy, wasn't he?
Most definitely. And he started to come really into that destiny, as you say, maybe about a year and a half before he died. He started to put everything together and realized that where he was and his potential to do even go more higher.
Yeah, including, there was rumor just, recently had come out a telegram to Paul McCartney from Jimmy saying, hey, we're going to get together and form a band with Miles Davis. Come on over because we want you to play bass. What do you think would have happened if that had occurred?
Just close your eyes and imagine. But you have to keep in mind, he was playing with Miles. He was jamming with Miles occasionally, even before that letter.
Yeah. Yeah, because they were in the same studio in different rooms. They'd see each other from time to time. I learned, and thank you very much. We've had a chance to talk to several people that have both played with you and with Jimmy. Most notably Billy Cox and Gerardo Velez have both played with both you, with Jimmy and you. And I asked Gerardo about that because he brought up Miles to me and was talking about them being in the studio, working together. And I said, well, hold on a minute. I got to ask you this rumor. You might know. What do you think? He goes, well, it certainly was possible. I mean, they were jamming together and all of that, but it's one of those things. If it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But boy, the possibilities of Miles and Jimmy, at the beginning of what is, kind of called jazz fusion. Miles just come out with Bitches Brew, and it just, I really thought, when I read that rumor, I'm like, boy, I wish that would have happened. That would have been crazy.
Yeah. But you mentioned Bitches Brew. A lot of people are not aware that both Jimmy and Sly Stone were supposed to be on that album with Miles.
Right.
So I'm not sure what happened with Sly, but we know why Jimmy wasn't included on that album. But at least they still got back together as friends after that incident. And, we're trying to make things work.
Well, everybody knows Miles is Miles, and he was a force of nature. Why do you think Hendrix still resonates? Here's now 50 years beyond his passing.
I think more what he stood for. Of course, his talent, but more of what he stood for, the freedom, the individual freedom that he stood for, still resonates with a lot of people today.
Planes that fly, you see the ones that are flying too low. Look out for the lemons, you see the ones that are flying. Back down to earth, my friend, back down to me. All been good and I time to
Okay. Up next is a man who helped add a little more Latin flavor to the Hendrix sound, Gerardo Velez.
My first professional gig, I don't know if you know, was Woodstock with Jimi Hendrix.
No, I did not know. That was your first professional gig.
Yeah, that was the first gig I ever got paid to perform. Like, I had a little group with my friends, but we played with Cafe Wah. We auditioned there. Van Morrison was auditioning there too. He had just come from England. But that's how I started with Jimi. That was my first professional gig. And Woodstock was also my birthday. It started August 15th is my birthday.
Really?
So it was my 22nd birthday and my first professional gig.
So how did you get hooked up with what eventually becomes the Band of Gypsies?
Okay. I met Jimi at a play. There was a gentleman named Steve Paul. Steve Paul was the manager of Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter, and brought them up from Texas. Mm-hmm. Jimi was already a star, and we were hanging out. And, Michael brought Johnny and brought him to the gig. I think that was just before we started working together. It was at the Fillmore East. We were backstage, and Johnny came back. Everybody met. And it was so simple because they were in the front of the stage, and Steve looks up and he said, "Hey, Jimi." And Jimi said, "Hey, Steve, what's going on?" This is, everything was so relaxed. "Hey, man, you got to meet Johnny. He's a great guitar player." "Hey, Johnny." That's what it was from the stage. And then this is as he's going, "Hey, nice to meet you, Johnny." So Steve Paul owned a nightclub in New York called Steve Paul's The Scene, SCENE, The Scene, where you go to be part of the scene.
Yeah, got to be cool seen.
And all that.
Right.
And if you work there, perform there, they let you in for free. So I worked with a guy named Kenny Rankin, beautiful, great singer. And he wrote a song about me called Velez, if you ever have a chance to listen, which I'm very honored that he wrote about me and our experience together. Yeah. But Kenny, I was also on Little David Records with George Carlin and that whole group. That's another story we could talk about. But Kenny got me in because we performed at Steve Paul's Scene. And one night I went into Steve Paul's Scene with my friends. I had my own, I knew everybody in New York and I knew the whole scene really, really well. And I had like a whole row of people with me. And I was performing with Rick Derringer, who's a dear friend of mine. Mm-hmm. And at that time, he had on Hang On, Snoopy, Hang On. I think he was 17. His brother was 18.
Yeah.
And they were the house band. They weren't the house band. Rick always corrects me. He says, "We were not the house band." They weren't the house band. But they were
always there.
They were there a lot. And my coach is, "Yeah, I know, Rick, but you were there a lot." Okay. So anyway, Rick was there because I knew if he was there, he was always a gracious guy and would let me perform. Mm-hmm. So I got up and performed. Jeff Beck was playing. Jeff, Rick, and his band, Rick's band. His brother on drums. Drums or bass? Brother on drums, I think. Money, I forget right now. I got to get all this stuff recalculated in my brain. But his brother was in the band with him as well. After we performed, I went back to my seat and I sat down. And I got tapped on the shoulder, and it was Jimi, and leaned over and said, "Hey, man, that was some great playing. Do you want to come up and jam when I'm playing?" So I turned around and I said, "All right, man, let's do that." Boom. And that was it. And my friends, "Oh, my God, that's Jimi Hendrix. You know that." I'm going, "So what?" Because I'm 20 years old, and I'm creating my own destiny. I don't give a crap about Jimi Hendrix. As far as I'm concerned, he's just too loud, and I don't know what's going to go on with this guy. I play percussive instruments. Where am I going to fit in with this dude? That's all I was thinking about.
Right.
Because, like I said, I'm 20 and I'm on my own journey. So we go and we play and it goes great. Jeff Beck's like trying to outdo Jimi, and Jimmy's so cool. Jeff Beck's going, because he's a blues player. And he'd dig into a note in Jimmy's face and go, and Jimi would look at him and go, and play something really fluid and get him really angry.
That's great.
Then we left. We had a little joke about that going back. So he tapped me and said, "Man, I guess Jeff got a little pissed off." He tapped me on my back. And that was the beginning of our friendship. So we laughed.
It sounds like Jimi has a history of messing with those British guitar players. The famous story of Monterey Pop, where Mama Cass leans over to Pete Townsend and says, "Hey, I think he's stealing your act."
Yeah, maybe he thought that thing was his, but maybe it was. But anyway, Peter Townsend then said afterwards, he said, "I'm no Jimi Hendrix."
Oh
yeah. Which he was. Yeah. But I was gracious, and they were good for they became good mates, right? So that's how I met Jimmy, and then Jimmy said, "Hey man, I'm recording over at Media Sound." Media Sound, I was with the record, but Media Sound, you want to come over? Now, and then it became a nightclub. Now it's a restaurant. It's on 57th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue. And we went to record. In the other recording studio was the Mamas and the Papas. John was there. And the Stones were in another room recording. So John Phillips and Keith Richards were dominating the bathroom because they were getting high the whole time in the bathroom. And we would go, hey, boom, 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 boom. I got a piss. Get that out. Fuck yeah, I'm going to tell this one today, It was like that. So we recorded for 10 hours. And it was great. And then afterwards, we went up to the lounge. And we all smoked cigarettes. I'm out there slicing. So
was this Axis Bold as Love? Is that the album?
No. Here's the thing. When Jimmy had already done those albums, we were the first fusion band because and I'll tell you how. Jimmy said to me afterwards, he said, "No, I'm breaking up the experience, and I want to do something that has other music in it. I love what you play because you add Latin, African, and you understand rock and roll at the same time. This is fun. It's interesting and fun playing with you." I said, I felt the same way. I said, but I play acoustic, dude. You'll drown me out. He said, no, I'm going to bring in my buddy from the Army who plays bass and my other buddy from the Army plays rhythm guitar. That will allow me, by him playing rhythm guitar, it will allow me to do other things, to not only try to just be me, to try to, move on. I'm tired.
You wanted to get beyond the power trio thing of the moment, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. And while we were doing that, Miles Davis was doing Bitches Brew in the studio with all the studio guys. I mean, I introduced Jimmy to Miles because my girlfriend, I live with twins, and we had this other girl that was,
of course
we were all together. It's free love.
Yeah,
man. It was free love. I lived with 4 girls for 5 years at that time, but it was free love back then. So anyway, we were going over a house, and Miles lived 2 doors down on 77th Street, just off the West Side Highway. West End Avenue, actually. And he calls me over, and I'm walking out with the girls. He said, "Hey, man, come on, man. What you got, man? You got a lot of money, man? You got father rich or some shit, man? How you get them bitches, man? How you get all them bitches?" I said, "Hey, Miles Davis, right?"
I'm asking you a question. God damn it, give me
I'm asking you a question, motherfucker. You don't have me back. Yeah. And that's how we started. We got high together.
The concept of Jimi Hendrix and Miles Davis coming together, was that really going to happen?
Here's the thing. Jimmy was in the middle of a lot of turmoil with Michael Jeffries getting out of his management deal. That's why after we did Woodstock, he was contractually obligated to do a tour as a trio.
Yeah.
Playing the hits to make the money and also to generate attention to the music, right? So we were put on hold. He said, "I got to do this, G, because, there's no more money." Now, he used to pay me. He always carried at least 10 grand in his pocket. But don't forget, this is back in the time of cash and checks. So who carried checks? You were sophisticated.
Not a lot of credit cards back then, right?
Yeah, there's no credit cards. And, people ran a lot of, you always had cash, but it wasn't that much stuff. Today, forget about it. But then you always had cash, and he always had this, it was like a fanny pack. It was fanny pack with 10 grand in it all the time. And that's how he paid. He paid me $1,000 a week.
He did. And then, with the Miles Davis question.
Yeah, the Miles Davis question was they were going to get together. And we were, talking about doing something when he got back. So he didn't come back from that tour. He called me, said, "I'm coming back." That never materialized. Miles went off, did the record, And then he was the first guy to break out doing fusion, which I later did with the group I was originally in, Spyro Gyra, the best-selling contemporary fusion band. So we did a lot of co-bills with Miles, and he and I talked about that over the years because it was Miles Davis and Spyro Gyra billing and what it was like, and if they would have got together. Like I said, you would have drove them nuts, man. You were a pain in the ass. And Miles would laugh because I always told him like it is because it didn't affect me one way or another. You know, and he was a snotty guy.
Miles definitely had an attitude, that's for sure. Whereas Jimmy was far more laid back, right?
Jimmy was a kind, sensitive, empathetic individual who was an observer more than an activator or an insider. I was the insider in our hang because I knew all the venues, and I'd say, okay, you're in town, I got it set up, coming to pick you up. I'd come and pick him up with, the cars, the drugs, the girls, and we go out and party. And we go from the Salvation to Anganos to this place to that place. And don't forget, it was like telephone, so how do you communicate? I make a couple of calls during the day. I said, I'm coming by with Jimi Hendrix. Have a table ready for us. So they would. So I looked like, the king of the strip, basically. And I took Jimmy all around because he was, like I said, he was from Seattle.
Yeah, that West Coast passive.
This was like, whoa, as well as I'm loving it at the same time. We always carried a little pen and paper to write stuff down, new ideas, songs, and so on. And that was the creative vibe. And if he and Miles would have got together, who knows, it would have been fantastic. And I would have liked to think I'd be a part of it.
Definitely instrumentally would have fit perfectly.
Yourself all excited. If we can this go, I bet you there's some of y'all among us who think that life is nothing but a joke, right? But you and I, we've all been through there, and this is not our fate. So let us stop talking falsely now. Cause man, the hour's getting late. Hey!
So back to the Woodstock thing. So it's your birthday. Had you guys been there before the Monday morning performance, like the night before? I mean, what you know? Tell me about when you got in and
we. I was in New York on the early part of my birthday. Then we drove up later on. We went to Harlem for a minute. Then drove up with the girls and in our limo, and we got up there, and then they said everything is closed. There's nowhere you can go. And we said, "Oh shit!" We barely got there because we had to go all the way around instead of going straight up 95 to get to Kingston. We had to go all the way and go up 80 and come around. But anyway, then we got to the house, our house. Then they drove us in vehicles, and some guys went in the helicopter. There was a back road. So you had the main roads coming in to the festival grounds, and there was a back road, which they brought us through. And then they brought us up to a house. It was a house on the farm, on the estate. I don't know if it was Yasgur's house or it was a house that we stayed in. And we got there like we were supposed to go on at 12 o'clock at night. So we probably got there at 8 or 9 or something like that, you know. And I was there the whole time because it was my birthday on the 15th. So I was taking a lot of stimulants. I was a speed freak at that time. So I was doing a lot of methamphetamine and stuff, and I didn't sleep for weeks. So I was partying the whole time, and I was going down to the festival grounds the whole time. And then I went back to the house, and they said, "Man, it's freaking crazy, man. The band sound great." And I said to Jimmy, "Remember that band we saw in town at Tinker Street Cafe, that Carlos Santana Latin band? They were slamming, man." So, and Jimmy would say, okay. And so then they drove us in, like I mentioned, and we sat in that house for about basically 9 o'clock at night till 7 o'clock in the morning when they finally said, "Okay, you're going to go up." But in between that, they told us 3 different times, "Get ready, you're going to go up." So, we were a bunch of hippies dropping acid and mushrooms and stuff. And, we'd get prepared for the show. And, he was a very concerned guy. Jimmy was about the music. Right. He was not a drug guy. I was the drug guy. Right, he was not.
Right.
Just let's get that straight. Well, we played at the Woodstock Playhouse. We played at a club called Salvation. We played in Harlem. And then I think we played one other place. We did like 5, maybe 6 gigs. That was it. Because it was an experimental band. If you look at our set list, you'll see those instrumental songs like Jam at the House. I co-wrote. I didn't get any credit. Didn't make any money off of it either because I was a kid. I didn't know any better. And when we sat around working ideas like a Jam at the House, I came up with that whole thing, which is a Mozambique beat. And then we went into Jimmy's section with that. So, we added to it in that way. So when you go over and you look at the various songs that are instrumental and the other ones like Isabella and different songs that are very instrumental leaning, it was because Jimmy had a rhythm guitar player that he felt would allow him to stretch out further in these new songs, which had a lot of jazz chords and a lot of primal feel that the percussion was bringing to it. So Michael said, "Listen, I don't know this kid, Jerry Velez, who the hell is he? You should be using this guy, Juma." And Jimmy said, "Yeah, we met Juma, great guy. We all got together. It worked." So Juma brought
you have the Latin
influence. I call Juma the African Prince.
Influence. So the 2 pieces,
So he brought the African influence, and I brought the Latino and rock pop influence. Rock influence that Jimmy and I.
Right.
He was really into the music. He taught me how to record. He taught me etiquette in the studio. I came by one time with a bunch of babes and champagne and drugs, and
he's like, "No, this is a work environment."
On,
right.
And let's do it, bro. And he's saying, and I'm going, "Sorry, man." I left, and I felt really. It impacted me to this day. It was my first real lesson learned as to business is business, and the rest goes. And Jimmy was as I'm saying, even when we were partying, he was like, "Go ahead, you guys party. I'm going to work on my parts."
That's great insight. I really appreciate that. So, Jimmy's not around, but there are still, a relevancy and a huge interest in what he accomplished in a very short period of time. There are tribute acts that are all over the world. A favorite of ours, I think, is "Kiss the Sky," featuring Jimy Bleu in the role of Jimi Hendrix, and I think you're very aware of them. If I remember right, I think you've actually played with them, right?
First of all, they're the best in that, and I'll tell you why. Because they're not a tribute band; they're a recreation band. And Mike, who put it all together, I mean, he's really the brains behind it. God bless him. Mike, gotcha, brother. He's man, because what he's done, he said, no, we're not going to be a tribute band. We're going to recreate each major event that Jimmy did, Monterey, Woodstock. I mean, he has a guy that looks like me, a guy playing congas, and he had the congas that
the exact congas and everything.
Everything, the amp, the shirt. He had a shirt made like this. I mean, attention to detail. And then you got Jimy Bleu.
Yeah.
This guy not only looks like Jimmy, first of all, he's a slinky little sexy dude like Jimmy was, and he's a left-handed, upside-down guitar player. Yeah. How could it be more
authentic? Yeah.
Good? If you didn't actually meet Jimmy, I would say, you are Jimmy reincarnated, because when he gets up on that stage, from all the other acts that I've seen, I look at Jimmy and I go, you go, brother. Because, like I said, there's a lot of guys that can play the parts, but when you actually look at them, that's not Jimmy. It's guys doing a tribute to Jimmy. They do a recreation. You feel like you're at that concert. You're living and breathing the light show. He even has the light show from back then. He licensed the light show. I mean, the attention to detail is beautiful. So any of your listeners that are listening out there, these guys are fantastic. If it wasn't for COVID, I'd be up there jamming with them whenever I can, because it's always a pleasure to play with them, hang out with the guys. And also they're keeping the spirit of Jimmy alive more than any of the other bands I work with.